What's up guys, it's Eli and welcome back to the channel for another video. So I have been using Logic Pro as my main DAW for music production for a while now. But when it comes to mixing, it always fell a little short for me. As a matter of fact, I always hated mixing in Logic up until the latest release as of 11.1. Prior to working in Logic, I was using Studio One as my main DAW. I used it for production, recording, mixing, mastering, just about everything that you can do when it comes to audio production. I was using Studio One for that. But when I switched over to Logic, everything changed. I fell in love with using Logic for production, but like I said, mixing, it always fell a little short. Now, just for context, when I was using Studio One, I was learning how to do just about everything. So I didn't necessarily have a workflow. I was learning how to produce music. I was learning how to record, how to mix, how to master, how to do just about everything that you do when it comes to audio production. So I didn't really necessarily have a workflow. But by the time I started using Logic, I had known a lot more than when I was using Studio One. So I guess you can say I kind of had somewhat of a workflow, but why did I hate mixing in Logic? I don't really know, at least not until the latest release of Logic Pro 11.1. So every time I had to do anything in Logic, I would export out the stems and go mix it in Pro Tools. Even if I was just making a beat and sending that beat out, I would make the beat, export the stems, and go mix it in Pro Tools and send that out. I remember one time I received a session to mix, and that session came in Logic, which I could have just opened it up and just pick it up from there and continue, but I ended up exporting everything out and moved it over to Pro Tools and did the mix that way. And that's what I've been doing for pretty much the past 4 years. So what actually has changed that made me consider Logic as a good mixing DAW? Well, as of the last release, Logic finally caught up with a few updates. And really, I never even thought that those were the things that were holding me back from mixing in Logic until I noticed that they were available now. So I started actually looking into them. And I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of videos about people talking about all the new bells and whistles that Logic has to offer now. I'm not really going to be talking about those things, though I will show you some examples. But I'm not really going to say like these are the best things that came with Logic, though they do help a lot. And I didn't even think that those were the things that were holding me back from mixing in Logic until they became available. When I was working in Studio One, I didn't really know how to navigate DAW. It was all about just trying to figure out a way to do the things that I wanted to do. And a lot of times I would be scrolling down through my plugin list trying to find the plugin that I'm trying to use. But what I did realize though is when I knew exactly what I wanted, I would just go in the search bar and type it in. There it was. And as far as I know, every other DAW that I've used at least have that function except for Logic. Well, as of the last release, they now have this function. So typically, when I'm working in Logic and I needed a plugin or anything, I would probably just, click on the enter point and scroll down through the list of all the plugins that I have. And then from there, I would choose the plugin that I want. Let's say this one is one of my favorite plugins as of late. So this is pretty much how I would be searching for all the plugins that I want. But as of the new release, now you can just quickly search for what you want. Right? So if I want to add this plugin here, it's called Blitzer. And there it goes. Done. The process is done. So this is a small thing. It's not like big life-changing situation, but the fact that you can do that now in Logic, it makes a big difference when it comes to mixing. And I think that's one of the things, at least as of now, thinking about it, this is one of the things that was holding me back from mixing in Logic. And yes, till this day, I still find myself scrolling through the plugin list to find certain plugins that I want, especially if I don't know the name of it. But when I do know the name, quickly type it in and pull it up. That way, I think that saves a few seconds of my time, and that really do add up, depending on how many sessions you have to do. Things like that. So yeah, that's one of the things that was actually holding me back from mixing in Logic. And now that they had this feature, I'm actually really considering moving into Logic for mixing full time. As a matter of fact, I submitted my first mix done completely in Logic last week, and I got feedback. They only had one revision that I needed to do, and once I did that revision, sent it back, the mix was approved right away. So, and I did enjoy the process of mixing in Logic. So maybe Logic is gonna be my new mixing DAW moving forward. The next thing that Logic recently updated that is a big game changer. I say big as in like it really helps, but it's not really like, night and day difference. But, having the ability to do it now is just better. That is the ability to rearrange tracks in the mix window. Right. For the longest, if you wanted to rearrange a track, you had to move over to the timeline view and mix it that way, right? So if I wanted this track to be, let's say here, previously I had to be in the timeline view to be able to do that. But now, if I'm in the mix window and I still want to have that same move, I want to have that track to be where I want it to be. Let's say I want to move it here. I can do that right from the mix window, and I don't have to be in the timeline view to be able to do that, which I think is just amazing. All right, so that's another thing that I think was holding me back. I never actually thought about it prior to this update until now that I'm starting to mix with it, and I'm realizing that, hey, not being able to do that previously was kind of slowing me down in my mixes. It's all about the workflow, right? Being able to do the things that you want at a moment's notice, I think, plays a huge role as far as how we think about mixing. So not being able to do those things, I think, was actually holding me back, even though I wasn't really thinking about those were the specific things that were holding me back. But now that I know Logic was not able to do them, I think it's pretty clear that they were the things holding me back from mixing in Logic full time. All right. All right. So while we are in the subject of moving things around in the mix window, there are two updates that I would love to see that Logic does in the next release, which is basically about giving you the options to do certain things, especially when it comes to your aux returns. All right. So right now, if I want to open an aux return for a track, it's automatically going to send it to the far right of the mix window, which is fine. There's nothing really wrong with that, except I don't like to have it there. I'd prefer to have it right next to the track that I'm working with. For example, let's say I was working on my drums and I wanted to create a reverb for my drums that I know I'm going to share between multiple drum elements. So I'm not going to put it exactly on the track that I'm working on currently, because I know I'm going to be sharing it between a few elements on my drums, right? So that is a good time to actually use a bus to do that type of effects, right? So let's say I go here and I want to do a bus. Once I select my bus, it's created, but you don't see where it is, right? That's because Logic sends it all the way to the right. Now, what you can do at this point is hold down and drag it and bring it to your drums. But for a big session, as you can see, that takes a lot. And sometimes you might even not drag it in the right place like I just did right now. So you have to go back again, find it, and try again. Right? So that's a lot of work to do. I would love to have the ability to just create that track and it auto-populates right next to the track that I'm currently working on. Right? I know I'm going to share it between the drums, so having it already within my drum group would be amazing. Right. So I think if Logic could give us the ability to do that, that would be great. So that is one of the things that I think Logic should give us the options to at least turn that on, whether we want it to be far left or far right or right next to the track that we're working on. I think that they should give us that option to to select which one that we prefer. And the next option would be about having it auto-populate in your timeline, right? Not everybody wants their access to be populated in their timeline, which is fine. But for the people that do want it to be populated on the timeline, we don't have to be doing that every single session, right? Say I want these tracks to be on my timeline right now. They're currently on that. If I go to the timeline view, you'll see I don't have those tracks there. If I want to have them on the timeline, what I have to do is just come up here and create track, and that would bring it to the timeline. Or I could just do the command you see popped up there, and that created the track and added it to my timeline, which is fine. You can do that. That is perfectly fine. But I would love to have the ability to just auto-populate it there the second that I open the track. I don't have to go in through the process of creating the track in the timeline for it to be there. I'd love to be able to just have it there as I start my sessions, right? As I'm routing things, the return tracks are auto-populated in the timeline. That's how I prefer to work, so that would be good if Logic would give us the option to be able to do that. If Logic is able to give us these two things, I think it has the potential of becoming the best DAW for mixing, period. If Logic were able to give us these features, I think it would be unstoppable, right? Maybe I'm wrong, but let me know what you guys think. Comment down below, let me know what you thought of this video. Are you having the same problems, or were you having the same problems with me when it comes to mixing in Logic? And make sure to drop a like to show your support to this video. And if you have not subscribed yet, make sure to hit on the subscribe button and turn on the notification for more videos like this. I'll see you in the next one.